All right, so here I am, telling some of my story. I am responding to Kristen's challenge to staff here to share our stories, to tell our stories, to reflect on some of our story, and I appreciate that challenge. I am a fan of that challenge. I think that is something we should always be doing, is thinking about our lives. Not necessarily in a critical way, but in a reflective way and a kind of awareness way. What's going on? What's God doing in my life? What are the things that are shaping who I am and who I'm becoming? So I appreciate this opportunity. I'm also reminded of actually my friend Lyle, who recently actually challenged me me and us as an organization to tell our stories. And he's a good friend of mine from the community and has a important story to tell as well. And I know he wants to tell it, but he kind of was feeling that we should, as kind of people, part of this community, inner city community, we should also be the ones to give an example of being willing to do that ourselves. So I want to take that seriously. So I wanted to reflect a little bit on calling, what calling has looked like for me coming into this community of the North End here in Winnipeg, as well as home, what that looks like for me, how I reflect on home. And so, I wanted to look at that a little bit. So calling, how did I end up in the North End? It's kind of a fun story that I enjoy telling because it is, as many of us might know or have heard or have experienced, God often works in weird ways, mysterious ways, unexpected ways. So when I was second year in university here in Winnipeg, I had the opportunity to do a practicum with my studies there. I went to South Africa to do my practicum. It was an intensive practicum working in a rural area of the Eastern Cape of South Africa. I was very intrigued by the history of South Africa, reconciliation, their Truth and Reconciliation Commission that went on there back in the late 90s to early 2000s. Desmond Tutu and some of his Archbishop Desmond Tutu and his theology around reconciliation and the need for forgiveness. And so I was privileged with that opportunity to go there and to meet the people and work with some of the people there and to immerse myself in that community, in that area, in that culture. Probably one of the most formative times of my life, very eye-opening, and very a lot of growth happened for me in those short 3 months. I learned from the people there in many ways. As I was coming back from my time there, I remember flying home at the end of my time there and just reflecting on my time. And I remember just thinking to myself, man, I had such an amazing experience. Maybe this is where I'm called to do. This is maybe I'm called to be a part of mission and ministry in South Africa. And right away, I got a very strong sense, and I believe it was God speaking and moving in me. And it was, no, Jeremy, you need to go back home. You need to be a part of the community in Winnipeg. And right away, my mind went to the North End. I mean, there was a sense there of a desire to be a part of maybe the most kind of forgotten people. That was part of the people I was working with in South Africa. And so my heart was there in that sense. And so then when I thought of Winnipeg, my mind went straight to North End. I'd never been in the North End before. I didn't grow up here, but I had been 2 years at CMU. And so never been here before, but right away it's like North End. Okay. So North End. And that's actually how I first got connected with Inner City Youth Alive. Somebody told me about Inner City Youth Alive. I didn't know any organizations or any people here. And I started volunteering here in university. And that was my entry point into the North End. And I've had many different experiences since then in the community that have brought me to where I am today. Some of them with Inner City, some of them with other organizations, some of them just living in the neighborhood. And so just this idea of calling, and one of the things that I am so grateful for is that since that calling, since that awareness of that invitation that God had for me to the North End community, that has never changed. If anything, it's gotten stronger. And I believe that is of God. And that is a gift. I feel and I believe. This community has become home. And every time my wife and I come back from being away, if we're visiting, traveling, visiting family, in another region, we come back, and as we get closer to the North End, it's like there's this warming inside that happens. And as we come over the Salter Bridge and we see the North End, it's like it's almost like we're home, and it feels good. And so very grateful for that gift, that dynamic. And so the North End has become home. It is home. Teresa and I had the opportunity to buy a house in the community about 10 years ago. So we've been living here for 10 years. And we love our home. We love our neighborhood. We love our neighbors. And this is not we're doing this for the Lord, and we are sacrificing, for God as missionaries. It's not that at all. It is, it comes out of a place of want, a deep desire to connect, to put down roots, to be in relationship. And we have had the opportunity to do that. And that has happened with our neighbors, friends in the community. And as we continue to think about and figure out what life looks like for us, this continues to be a place of grounding, a place of rootedness, and our roots keep, I think, going deeper and deeper as we spend more time here and live here and continue to make our home here. I think my most important role and if I was to define my calling, I think I could summarize it as neighboring. I've worked in different roles, and I've also worked outside the community for a stretch of time as well. But throughout that whole time, that calling never changed. And that is actually a very comforting thing. I am not here for a job. And that's so freeing. This is my community, no matter whether I'm working as a community minister or not. And that I think speaks to the roots that we've been blessed to plant and to grow, and the fact that calling is bigger than a job, and that's comforting. I have appreciated the opportunity to work with Inner City, and I hope that continues. And it allows me to neighbor in different ways. But I think as I reflect on our calling as Christians, my calling as a follower of Jesus to be a neighbor, I think that is very powerful. And it also helps me to not put myself above others. It helps me to remember that God works through the process of relationship, and neighboring is very much about relationship. And it's God working in the neighboring, the friendship, the community. It's not about me saving other people. I've recently really felt that we don't need to worry about saving people. Our job is not to save people. That's God. God is in the work of saving people. But my job, our job as followers of Jesus, is to love people. And I think there's a difference there. And so that's very freeing too. Yeah. So I guess I'm just kind of, reflecting here, and seeing where this goes. But one of the questions that comes up is there sometimes we get people who will ask us about our lives and our work, and sometimes there's the question of, oh, you guys live in the North End. That must be hard. Or how is that, like with the eyes getting big? And I think we all, we have an understanding of what a place is like, or what a group of people are like. And sometimes that's no fault of our own. I mean, we are shaped by what we hear and that. But every time I hear that, it does not sit well with me, because my wife Teresa and I both do not see living in the community as a burden. Now, I'm not speaking for everyone, because some other people might have a different experience, but it's not a burden. Are there some hard things? Yeah, for sure. I think any community has hard things, has struggles, has temptations or brokenness of different kinds. For sure, that's there. And we need to be engaging with that. That's part of life. That's part of neighboring. But please do not put me on a pedestal. Do not make me a martyr, because that's not what I am here. I'm a neighbor. I'm a friend, and I am blessed by my neighbors too. As I get to know people, man, there's so much beauty in them. There's so much generosity, so much strength, resilience that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. And there are times where it's raw, and where we see a mother across the street who does not have custody of her children, or the kids are being taken away. And yeah, that's hard. We see people walking down the street who have two bags because they don't have a place to live. We see a woman walk by our house whose screaming, but no one's around, having a very intimate conversation. Obviously has mental illness. So yeah, it's raw at times. But just because people can't hide their stuff, their crap anymore, does not mean they're any less human. They're actually probably more embracing their humanness and their brokenness than many of us. And we need to learn from that. We need to learn from what it means to be broken, what it means not to have the easy answers. We need to learn from people who are in the struggle and maybe don't know how to get out, and maybe we don't know how they're going to get out. But that's where Jesus meets us. That's where Christ meets us and transforms us. And I wouldn't give up those relationships for anything. I don't say that, I'm never going to leave, because we never know what's going to happen in life. So I try to be humble with that. I don't want to be prideful and say, I'm here and I'm going to stay here and everyone else should, because everybody has a different journey. But I have never thought about leaving in the 10 years I've been here. My heart has not wanted to. And I think that's because this is a beautiful place to live. And as far as the idea of safety, because a lot of times people will say, are you safe there, right? I could never raise my kids there. My wife and I don't have children, so we can't speak to that directly. But I have a hard time, at least for us, for my wife and I, to be able to justify leaving over safety. We have not felt unsafe, actually. We feel very safe in our community. And I think part of that has to do with knowing our neighbors, and them knowing us for sure. But also, we don't go out walking at night either. And so there's also certain things that we do to be smart and to be safe too. But as followers of Jesus, we are not called to be safe. We were never called to be comfortable. We were invited into a journey and an adventure of life and growth and faith as followers of Jesus. But that does not include safety. That does not include protection. So I think we as a church in general have lost a lot with our need to be safe. And that's a cultural thing. That is not a Christian thing. So I guess I don't want to be on a soapbox here, but that is one thing that I'm learning, and I've learned, I think, and I believe is true. I look forward to continuing to grow our roots in our community, in the North End community, to continue to get to know the beautiful people here, to continue to discover what God has for us as in us, not me and Teresa, us, our community. Because we get to journey together, and that's beautiful.